I imagine that by now, all of you have heard of the sad and tragic and upsetting news from New York City last week. A man named Jordan Neely came onto a subway train, and Jordan had long struggled both with homelessness and with mental health issues and challenges. He was asking people for food and drink or money to buy food and drink, and as people normally do on the New York subway, they just ignored him, and he got a bit frustrated, which makes sense. When you're hungry and thirsty, it's easy to get frustrated, and he was a bit agitated. Some witnesses say he was acting, quote, erratically. Now, this is a scene that plays out every day on most New York subway cars. Yet, on this particular day, on May 1st, a man named Daniel Penny came up behind Jordan and put him in a chokehold. 15 minutes later, Jordan was dead. He hadn't touched anyone, he hadn't threatened anyone, he hadn't harmed anyone, but he was dead. He was murdered on the New York subway in front of dozens of people, none of whom intervened to help him in any significant way. Now, I am positive that if you did a survey of the people on that train, including if you asked Daniel Penny himself, if you asked all those people, they would tell you that they believe in the sanctity of human life. They would tell you that they believe that homeless people have rights. They will tell you that they believe that we should offer support to people who are experiencing mental health issues or challenges. I'm sure that 100% or at least close to 100% of the people on that subway car would believe in all of these things. It's the thing about us humans, right? We love to say what we believe in. We believe in equality, and we believe in democracy, and we believe in justice. We Christians love to talk about what we believe in, don't we? We believe in love. We believe, most famously, in God. We say we believe in all kinds of things, all kinds of wonderful and beautiful things. But so often, when it comes time to act on our beliefs, we just don't do it. We don't. We believe in the sanctity of human life, and we believe in equality and democracy and love, but when it comes time to show that belief, to live that belief, far too often we humans simply don't follow through. We believe, or we say we believe, but we don't act. Now, Jesus was well aware of this human penchant for inconsistency, for hypocrisy, for complacency, right? Jesus was well aware of how often we human beings did this. He faced this kind of mismatch between belief and action, often from his own disciples. If you read the Gospels and you actually sort of pay less attention to Jesus, not something your preacher normally recommends, but if you read the Gospels and you sort of de-emphasize Jesus and pay attention to what the disciples are saying and doing, they don't come off looking great, right? It's not until the Acts of the Apostles that they start to actually seem to get their act together. Jesus was well aware of how often we human beings fall into this hypocrisy. We believe all kinds of things, but we don't actually act on those beliefs. Now, in our gospel passage today from the Gospel according to John chapter 14, Jesus is getting ready for his own death. He knows what's waiting for him in Jerusalem. I think, as I've discussed before, that he hopes that somehow it won't happen, but he expects that he's going to enter Jerusalem and he's not going to come back out. And he wants to give his disciples some final, crucial lessons. He's trying to prepare them, as he says today, for when they won't have him anymore. He won't be there to teach them, to lead them, to point out their hypocrisy, right? He needs them to start doing this work themselves. He wants to give some last crucial lessons. And so today, right, Jesus offers one of these lessons. This is how he starts his lesson. He says, if you love me, if you love me. He starts with a conditional statement, grabbing their attention. If you love me. Now, he could have finished this statement many different ways, right? He could have said, if you love me, then remember me fondly, right? After my death, just remember me fondly. He could have said, if you love me, then make sure that you have the right religious doctrines in your minds. That could have been his emphasis. He could have said, if you love me, then get vengeance for me on those who will kill me. Plenty of people have said some version of that, right? He could have said any of these things. But that's not what he said. What he says is, if you love me, keep my commandments. Keep my commandments. If you love Jesus, keep Jesus's commandments. In other words, if you have love and you have faith, make sure you're acting on it, that you're actually doing the work that Jesus has called us to do. Of course, this raises immediately the question in our minds, what are Jesus's commandments if we're going to do them? And the good news is that we know, right? We can summarize Jesus's commandments. Who here, quick pop quiz, Episcopalians are quaking in their boots, right? Who here can tell me what are Jesus's? I'll give you a hint. There's two basic commandments. What are they? There we go. Love God and love your neighbor, right? Love God and love your neighbor. Of course, we then have to ask, well, wait, what does Jesus mean by love? He's already said that if we love him, we need to do some kind of action. Well, what does it mean to love God? What does it mean to love our neighbor? And here we can sometimes get caught, because normally when Jesus teaches, you'll notice this when you look at his parables, right? Jesus likes to teach with questions and with these parables that aren't always easy to decode. Sometimes we're left wondering what Jesus means. But, my friends, we have great news. You've heard me quote from Matthew 25 before. This isn't the first time, and it won't be the last. Right? In the parable of the goats and the sheep, Jesus explicitly says, those who enter the kingdom of God have done 6 things. Fed the hungry, give water to the thirsty, clothe the naked, welcome the stranger, visit the imprisoned, and care for the sick. That is what Jesus means by loving our neighbor. Loving our neighbor is not about sentiment. It's not about belief either. It's about action. About action. Believing things is nice. Thinking the right doctrines is important. We can't act unless we actually have the belief and the conviction. We can't take the right action unless we know what needs to be done. I'm not trying to say that belief and theory are somehow unimportant. They're just incomplete. If we believe the right things and we think the right things, but we don't take the right action, what good are those beliefs to us or to anyone else? Jesus is clear and consistent throughout the Gospels that true faith always must manifest in action. In action. If you love me, keep my commandments. So we can say that we believe in the sanctity of human life, and we can say we believe in human dignity, and we can say that we believe in supporting people who are experiencing mental health challenges. We can say we believe in equality. We can say we believe in democracy, and we believe in justice, and we believe in love, and we believe in God. But at the end of the day, and unless we act on those beliefs, unless we act as if those things are true, our beliefs really aren't worth anything. If we stand around on a subway car while a fellow human being is murdered for being, I guess, slightly annoying, our beliefs don't really mean anything. Now, those people on that train, especially Daniel Penny, obviously failed to love Jordan Neely. I think that much is clear. But we need to be honest with ourselves that our society had already failed Jordan over and over and over. It's ridiculous and shameful for our society that he had to go onto a subway train and ask for food. Why wasn't he able to get food? Why wasn't he able to get decent shelter? Why was he asking strangers to cough up a few quarters so he could buy a hot dog? Why is that how we help people or refuse to help people who are hungry, who are thirsty, who are homeless? Our whole society has failed Jordan and so many people like Jordan. We talk about our beliefs and all kinds of things, but our society ultimately refuses to manifest those beliefs, to act on the beliefs that we have. Now, there's nothing that we humans can do for Jordan now. I hope and I trust and I pray that his spirit is with God, and I hope and I trust and I pray that in the restoration of all things, in the resurrection of all people, we will stand face to face. And I hope that he will be able to forgive us. But for now, he's beyond the reach of human hands. But, my friends, there are plenty of our neighbors still very much with us. There are plenty of our neighbors who still need love, who still need to be treated like human beings, like fellow people made in the image of God. There are still many people who are within range of our loving action, if we choose to keep Jesus's commandments. There are too many examples to try to list them all, but one that's been on my mind a lot this week are the thousands and tens of thousands of migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers entering our country. For years, of course, people have been entering and trying to enter, especially across our southern border. People in particular from Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador who are fleeing extraordinary violence, economic disruption, and natural disasters in that part of the world. During COVID, many people were prevented from entering the country due to a policy known as Title 42. It's a temporary measure put in place because of concern that COVID could be transmitted by some migrants. Title 42 was lifted this past Thursday. I think this is a good thing. You may have heard me praying over the last few months that we would welcome people trying to enter across our southern border. The ending of Title 42 means more people who need help can enter our country. That's a good thing. But it also means that there are more people coming who need food, who need clothing, who need water, who need housing, who need medical care, who often will need mental health care as well. Many of these folks have been through absolutely terrible circumstances. People are entering our country and they need assistance. They need our loving action. Now, as Christians, right, we know how to respond to people who are hungry, thirsty, and to people who are strangers, right? Jesus says to feed them, give them water, and welcome them. Unfortunately, not everyone in our country agrees that we ought to so directly follow Jesus's commandments. The government of Texas has a policy of simply buying bus tickets for many migrants and sending them to our fair city, as many of you know. This has been going on for at least 18 months, but we know that with the lifting of Title 42, the number of people coming to our city is only going to increase. The district has also made clear that emergency housing is full. And by emergency housing, they mean hotel rooms, basically, that they've been putting people in. Emergency housing is full. So there's no room left for anybody, and more people are coming. No room at the inn. We've heard that before, right? Now, our parish alone cannot solve these problems. We cannot, on our own, provide enough food and housing and care for thousands and thousands of migrants. But we can choose to hear our gospel passage today. We can choose to follow Jesus's commandments in our own small way. We can contribute to what these folks need. We can choose to actually live our beliefs if we want. There are many needs, but the most pressing need that I've been made aware of, And I've been in contact both with our diocese and with an organization called Migrant Mutual Aid Network, and they've been working closely together now for a long time. The most pressing need is for clothing. For clothing. Many of these folks are arriving with nothing but the clothes on their backs, and oftentimes the clothing they have has been so worn out and damaged that they need new clothing. Now, it's important that we get clothing that actually fits these folks, and oftentimes clothing in America is just a little bit too big. Now, Migrant Mutual Aid Network has actually put together an Amazon wish list where we can go, we can buy things, it'll get shipped directly to the Welcome Center where these folks will be arriving. My request, my hope, my plea is that here at St. Augustine's, we will choose to go on and buy a few things, whatever you can spare. One pair of pants or a pack of underwear or a pair of shoes, whatever you want, or more if you are able to do so. I know that many of us have legitimate misgivings about Amazon and often try to not use Amazon when we don't have to, but this is the best tool that we have in the moment to make sure that we get this clothing together quickly, the right kind of clothing, and get it to where it needs to go as soon as possible. Now, the link that you can use, if you so choose, is in your bulletin on page 12, right? That's the link that you can use, item number 3. And I'll try to make sure this gets in the Facebook comments and on Zoom as well. I'm not going to say the link out loud. That's never helpful. We'll make sure that it's available as a text. But it is in your bulletin on page 12. I hope that you will join me in following Jesus' call to love him and to love him by doing his commandments, by welcoming the stranger and clothing the naked. In this case, quite literally. Again, I want to reiterate, if you're hearing me, do not send money to the church. How often do you hear me say that? Right? But do not send money to the church. Instead, use this link to make sure that the right things are bought and sent quickly. Of course, if you have any questions, please let me know, and I will repeat this information at the announcements. This is an opportunity for us to actually live our beliefs, to actually live all that theory, to act and not only to think. Jesus was clear with his disciples. And remember that when Jesus is speaking to his disciples, he's speaking to us as well, right? If we love him, we ought to follow his commandments. Welcoming and clothing the stranger is a great start to a life of living Jesus' commandments. My friends, let's make sure that our beliefs actually mean something. Amen.